This is probably one of the question I've really wanted to ask you for the longest time. So please note that when I'm asking this question, this is very important to me. So, uh, during the movie Haruhi Suzumiya, the disappearance movie, there's a point near the climax of the movie where basically Kyon is having an inner monologue with himself and figures out why his friend Yuki was doing everything she did at that point, and he was trying to figure out what it all meant to him. There's a point in the movie where his other side basically starts talking to him. And when I first saw that, and anybody who knows me knows what I call this, it is basically to me the Kyon versus Crispin Freeman moment. Because as I was watching this movie, it wasn't Kyon anymore. It basically just Crispin Freeman comes out of nowhere and starts chewing his own character out. So my question for you was that really the mindset you had when you were voicing that role? Because that's probably the most pivotal role in that entire movie, considering the fact that yes, you have a lot of monologue in it, and it's basically the monologues are the on par with basically Edward Norton and Fight Club, essentially. So my question was, what was it like, and the direction, the essence of what it was to do that particular moment in that entire movie, leading up to that moment?
Yeah. Yeah, that is the climax of the film. Dubbing the movie, the Disappearance of Haruhi Suzumiya, is probably the most difficult dubbing work I've ever done because he doesn't shut up for 2 hours. And the challenge with that is when I'm playing a character and I'm having a dialogue with another character, I only have to really remember how I delivered the last line, because I'm going to be reacting to what the character in front of me says, and that's going to affect my line. So I don't have to remember that far back in order for it to sound like the conversation is progressing, because I say something, the other character says something, I say something in response to that character responds to me. We're sort of building Legos together, right? But in The Disappearance of Haruhi Suzumiya, I'm building the entire Lego castle myself. And if I don't remember what I did and how I said something 5 minutes ago in the film, it's going to sound like I'm repeating myself. Well, the problem is 5 minutes ago was like yesterday in recording time. So from an acting perspective, I was having them have to go back and give me all this pre-roll before I would record my next line so that I could make sure that the sort of stream of consciousness of what Kyon was saying was working well. And they were not used to that from me because I usually don't need that. They're like, Crispin, what's wrong with you? Are you becoming a worse dubber? I'm like, no, shut up. Trust me on this. If you do not let me go back and listen to this, it will not sound natural. It will sound like I'm repeating myself. It'll sound like I'm saying the same thing over again. It'll sound like I'm saying the same thing over again. It'll sound like I'm saying, you have to let me do this or it's not going to sound right. And that scene with the sort of climactic scene where Kyon faces himself. It's interesting that you said
you mean faces you.
Faces me. It's interesting that you say that it's Crispin talking to Kyon. I have to admit that in the moment when I was doing it, I was not thinking of it that way. I was not necessarily thinking of it as Crispin yelling at Kyon, but I can see why you might say that, because I think what I did in that moment is that I dropped all of Kyon's crap. Kyon hides behind a lot of stuff. He hides behind being disinterested. He hides behind being pessimistic about the world. He's what I like to call a sort of, he's sort of a reluctant grouch. He's grouchy about the world, but he really wants the world to be magical and amazing. Well, this is when that side of him that says, yo, jerk, wake up. It is magical and amazing. You're surrounded by magical and amazing things. This is what you've always wanted your entire life, and you're still poo-pooing it? You're still complaining about it? What the hell is your problem, dude? So if that sounds like Crispin yelling at Kyon, I think it's only because I've dropped away all of Kyon's baggage, all the stuff that he uses to cover himself up, to sort of defend himself. And so you've got sort of Kyon unvarnished. And when you've got a character that unvarnished, it gets closer and closer to who you are as an actor, because now you can't hide behind all of your shtick, all the different things that you might do to defend yourself against criticism, to defend yourself against people who might laugh at you. You have to just sort of plant both your feet and speak the truth. And that's really what that character that if you want to call him the Crispin character, I'm okay with that. What the Crispin character is doing, he's speaking truth to Kyon. He's saying, we're just going to do it. And he has to sound natural. There's a shot where he goes, you were tired. You were sick of it. You'd had enough. And he's sort of moving his arm on his right arm. He's moving his right arm. The rhythm of his arm is really weird. It took me a lot of times to get that rhythm of the delivery of that line so that it sounds natural with the way his body is moving. And it doesn't sound sort of Shatner-esque. I mean, I was really working hard to make sure that everything in that section sounds completely natural and believable. Otherwise, the whole film falls apart. That's the linchpin. Without that, the whole tent falls down. So that's what, and we went through and rewrote a whole bunch of the lines to make sure that the way I was saying things, playtime's over. Time to answer the question, and going at him like that and having Kyon go at himself. And then Kyon, when he yells back at himself, I mean, have you ever heard Kyon yell like that before? No. Kyon's like, fine. I'll drop all this crap. I'll speak the truth. You want to know how I really feel? This is how I really feel. And after that point, he sounds a lot like the Crispin character that you were talking about, right? Because he's dropped his baggage. He's admitted what he likes and what he doesn't like. He's going to make the decision about how the world is going to be from now on. So that's, if you wanted an insight into what was happening in the character at that moment, that's what it was. And believe me, I was sweating bullets in the studio, making sure that this came out just right. Because if it didn't, I was going to cry.
Well, I appreciate you giving me insight, and I will keep believing that is pretty much it is Crispin Freeman versus Kyon, considering that's the way I see it. And I appreciate all the hard work that went into that, because to me, that is the standout moment in that entire movie. And I had read the light novel that it was based on, but I cannot go back to the light novel and not think of that moment. So I very much appreciate you doing that moment.
That's very kind of you. Thank you very much.
Okay.